Google's world-sensing Tango technology is finally here, crammed inside Lenovo's Phab 2 New Pro. Alas, the software and the hardware here fall short. The phone itself is well built and packs an enormous battery, but an oversized body and a pair of lackluster cameras could spoil things for the average user. Then there's Tango. It's brimming with promise, but bugs and performance hiccups keep the tech from reaching its full potential. We're glad the Phab 2 Pro exists and that it might spur the development of improved Tango-enabled hardware, but this phone is best left to early adopters. I can't emphasize this enough, the Phab 2 Pro, $500, is enormous. Then again, how could it be anything but? We have plenty of things to thank for that, from the phone's 6.4-inch IPS LCD screen to the bank of capacitive buttons below it, to the massive 4,050 mAh battery under the hood. Of course, the real reason the Phab 2 Pro is so big is because of all the Tango tech Google helped squeeze inside. It's worth remembering that Google's Tango reference device for developers was a tablet with a 7-inch screen, one of NVIDIA's Tegra K1 chipsets and two batteries. That Google and Lenovo managed to squeeze all the requisite bits into a mostly pocketable smartphone is a feat in itself. There are, after all, plenty of non-standard parts here. Just look at the Phab 2's back if you don't believe me. Nestled between the 16-megapixel camera and the fingerprint sensor are two more cameras. One has an infrared emitter to determine how far things are from the phone, and the other is a wide-angle camera with a fisheye lens that works as part of Tango's motion tracking system. Turns out, Lenovo had to punch a hole in the phone's main circuit board to make room for all those sensors. Those cameras and sensors work in tandem with a customized version of Qualcomm's octa-core Snapdragon 652 processor. We've seen more conventional versions of this mid-range chip pop up in devices like Asus's new Zen phone, but the version we have here has been tuned to more accurately timestamp the data captured by all of the phone's sensors. Why? To keep the phone's location in lockstep with all the crazy stuff you'll see on screen. Also on board are 4GB of RAM, an Adreno 510 GPU, 64GB of storage, a micro-USB port and a tray that takes either two SIM cards or a SIM card and a microSD card as big as 128GB. So, long story short, the Phab 2 Pro is massive, and for good reason. The last time I played with the non-Phab phone this big was 3 years ago, when Sony launched a version of its Xperia Z Ultra running a clean version of Android in the Google Play Store. Since then, the market has coalesced around big smartphones with screens of about 5.5 inches. Years of similar-sized devices, then, means the Phab 2 Pro feels extra unwieldy. It would have been more of a problem if Lenovo hadn't done such a good job putting the Phab 2 Pro together. The body is carved out of a single block of aluminum, and the screen is covered by a sheet of Gorilla Glass that's ever so slightly curved around the edges for that subtle 2.5D effect everyone seems to love. The aesthetic is pleasant enough if you're into minimalist design, and big phone fans are probably going to drool, too. If you're thinking of getting one, though, best if you can get some hands-on time before taking the plunge. The 6.4-inch screen on the Phab 2 Pro is indeed massive, but mostly unremarkable. Lenovo went with an assertive IPS LCD screen, which basically means the panel can optimize colors and contrast on the pixel level. It's a handy trick for when you're traipsing around outdoors. It's excellent under direct sunlight, but the screen is otherwise forgettable. Don't get me wrong, its 2560 by 1440 resolution means it's still plenty crisp, even if it isn't as pixel-dense as other devices because of how big the panel is. Color reproduction is accurate too, though it'll definitely feel a little flat if you're coming from a device with an AMOLED screen like the Galaxy S7. What's more, brightness is respectable. This screen is just a touch dimmer than the iPhone 7 Plus. And viewing angles are also pretty great. I half expected the screen to be worse, because it would have been a likely place for Lenovo to cut corners on a $500 phone. The sound quality lags behind screen quality, but that's no surprise. The Phab 2 Pro has a single speaker carved into its bottom edge, which makes for anemic, muddy-sounding music, with bass notes subtly lacking in oomph. It's fine for sound effects in Tango-enabled games, but headphones are otherwise a must. It helps that the Phab 2 Pro ships with the Dolby Atmos app that launches automatically when headphones are plugged in. Included are presets for music, movies, games and voices, say, for podcasts, and, in general, they added a decent amount of oomph to my audio. Music, in particular, felt a little punchier and more expansive, though the results seemed to vary from song to song. Motorola has long been a fan of near-stock Android, and I'm glad its parent company, Lenovo, seems just as fond of it. The Phab 2 Pro ships with a build of Android 6.0.1 Marshmallow that has been left almost completely untouched. Seriously, there are no extra widgets, no visual junk, no bloatware. If you put the Tango-specific stuff aside, there are but a few add-ons, an app for simple file sharing, another for cloud backups, a sound recorder, a Dolby Atmos app for audio tuning and AccuWeather. The rest of Lenovo's work on the software front is much subtler, and largely meant to make using such a big phone easier. Rather than picking up the phone to see what time it is, for instance, you can toggle an option to wake the device by double-taping the screen. Still, another option causes the lock screen's pin input pad in the phone's dialer pad to slide to the left or right depending on how the Phab 2 is tilted, so you don't have to stretch your thumbs across the screen. And you're in luck if you've been looking for a smarter alternative to the traditional home button. There's an option for a floating on-screen button that provides quick access to all three traditional Android navigation keys, plus the screen lock, calculator, audio recorder and flashlight. I don't know about you, but I don't need to whip out a calculator all that often, so the inability to change any of those shortcuts is a little frustrating. You can add a second page of app shortcuts too, though the resulting grid of icons looks pretty ugly. Lenovo's light touch with software is appreciated, but it's far from perfect. Certain apps Gmail offer notifications that are hard to read because some of the text is too dark against the translucent gray notification shade. The problem is even worse when you're using a dark wallpaper, and surprise, a good chunk of the included wallpapers, including the one that's on by default, do indeed fall into that category. Since the Phab 2 Pro's 16-megapixel camera plays such an important role in making Tango's augmented reality work, you'd think Lenovo would have chosen a top-flight sensor. Not quite, but it has its moments. When the conditions are right, by which I mean there's plenty of light, the camera yields detailed shots with colors that are mostly true to life. Pro tip, you'll probably want HDR mode on all the time to give your photos a dose of verve that would otherwise be missing. My biggest gripe so far has been the finicky autofocus, an issue that only gets more bothersome in low light. Our office already has a Christmas tree in the lobby, and it posed no problem for the iPhone 7 Plus or the Galaxy S7. The Phab 2 Pro, on the other hand, refused to lock onto the tree no matter how many times I taped to focus on the screen. This doesn't happen all the time, but it's a pervasive enough issue that Lenovo should really issue a software update to address it. I wish I could say the 8-megapixel front camera was better, but it has a lot of trouble accurately rendering colors in selfies. Take me, for example, around this time of year I'm sort of a pale, milky coffee color, an observation backed up by selfies taken with the iPhone 7 Plus and the Galaxy S7. For reasons beyond comprehension, though, the Phab 2 Pro's front camera made me a deep orange-brown. That's with the face smoothing mode off and everything else set to auto, too. Seriously disappointing, Lenovo. The Lenovo Phab 2 Pro is an incredible thing, and it's just brimming with potential. It's also unpolished and frustrating to use a lot of the time. When the hardware and software don't come together as they should, it makes me wish Google and Lenovo had spent a little more time ironing out the bugs. But when everything does come together, which happens frequently, I feel like I'm playing with something from the future. Even so, there's work to be done. Hardly any of the Tango apps available for the Phab 2 Pro feel like killer apps. As developers continue to get a feel for what Tango is capable of, we'll see the platform become more useful, at least, I hope so. Part of that growth hinges on people starting to adopt Tango devices like the Phab 2 Pro, but it's pretty clear that in its current form, no one needs this phone. For all Lenovo's work cramming Tango into a well-built body, the Phab 2 Pro still feels like a proof of concept. If you're a developer or an early adopter, then by all means, go get one. Everyone else should remember that Tango doesn't end with this phone. It's special, it's immersive, and I think it could be huge for the future of mobile computing. It just needs time. I'm glad the Phab 2 Pro exists, but if there were ever a phone that wasn't meant for everyone, this is it. The race is on now, though, and who knows? Maybe the next device with this tech is the one that truly delivers on Tango's promise.